Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Samuel64, and welcome to the RoboCast. I'm joined alongside.
And as 913 the Wars Guru.
And Steve the American Killjoy.
And we are here to discuss the 13th episode of BattleBots 2019. Unlucky for some, we'll find out a bit later on. We have two guests this week. Guest number one, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Orion Beach. I'm from the Skorpios team, Offbeat Robotics.
And guest number two.
Hi, I'm Oliver. I'm from the ESC Debate Podcast, and I do Beetleweight stuff as well.
You do? Oliver, welcome
Finish
to the...
your beetle.
Oh, god damn it. Is that the new When BuggleBots? I'm going to come to you, Oliver.
Are we supposed to talk about blue robots, too? I mean, I can.
I mean, we'll talk more about maybe that later. But Oliver, I'm going to come to you quickly. Obviously, you mentioned ESC quickly. I love ESC. I absolutely adore ESC, and thank you for making it a thing.
I mean, it started a bit from a meme on Shunt posting, and now here we are. We're making a podcast and having a blast doing it, and we had you in the last episode, Sam. So that was fantastic. That was such a good episode.
I didn't bother watching that one, to be honest.
I wouldn't bother either. Something about Mastiff. I don't know.
Massive.
Yeah, that's the one.
I just say, it's nice to actually see. This is no disrespect to any other podcasters out there who do Robot Combat ones, but it's such an original podcast. That's what I really like about it. It's something different to the norm, and you're all of you are brilliant for making it. So thank you for entertaining me over the last few months.
I mean, to quickly pitch for people who've not heard it, it's basically a debate podcast. It's similar to Room 101, the TV show in the UK. Basically, we discuss three different robots, sometimes with guests, and decide whether or not they are worth going to, the arena in the sky to be immortalized and memorialized, or thrown into the pit of oblivion. It's a sort of an either-or thing. So debates and votes and
it's good fun.
All kinds of shenanigans.
I love doing that episode. So I had so much fun, and Rara still hates me, which is great.
I think if you mention Detonator, Rara will hate any of us.
We're not going to touch that anyway.
She did that. The first thing I said to her was, "So, Detonator, you sure about that?"
I'm going to come to Orion very quickly. Obviously, up to this point, until this episode, 3-0. That's quite the record. Were we expecting that going into this season, or was it very much a surprise in terms of how well you were doing?
I'll say it's always tough to know how well your bot's going to do. There's always so many details that you're worried about, and they always shove the mic in whoever's talking's face and say, "So you're going to go all the way, right?" And we all have
every
to
time.
go,
It's like, of course you are. No, I'm going out round two.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everyone has doubts. So here's the thing: you stick the mic in Paul Ventimiglia's face, who's the defending champ, and go, "So you're going to make it all the way," and instantly you'll sense doubts. Everyone doubts. Every fight could be a loss. Every fight could be your last fight of the tournament. So it's how it is. I mean, we saw Bronco this season. I'm sure they didn't come into it going, "Oh boy, here we go, 0-4."
Oh wow.
We'll get to that later on. I think definitely.
Sorry.
But I'll ask the same question that I asked Matt Spurk last week. Obviously, what if you was to grade your season up to this point? What would you have said? Was there always room for improvement? Or would you say so far everything has gone spot on?
For me, it's maybe 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
The robots, super durable. Got a bit of a wheelie issue with this current configuration and running the kinetic energy blade. Mm-hmm. The floor was really rough this season, rougher than it was last season. It undulated so bad.
Yes.
Yeah, it was like surfing. There's an inch difference in some spots of the arena between the panel joints and the center of the panel.
Wow.
You can see when the robots are in the starting squares, one corner of the robot will be touching and the other will be way out in space, just giant shadow underneath it.
Wow.
Something to watch for when they have that tight shot on the robot. And we just had so many problems because of that, trying to get the robot to stay on the ground and not bounce all over the place. I mean, the center of gravity on this version of Skorpios is a couple inches back and a couple inches up from the previous version, but we've never had this problem before. So it was one of those things that we were trying to figure out solutions for at the time, and we were really close to weight. So it was not much to adjust. We did a bunch of adjusting on the wedges to try and get them really fixed and really good on there, but we could see in fights where, like our Copperhead fight, we would, our very low to the ground wedge would surf up over a gap and get hit by their spinner and get sent up. Like, you could see that happening. You have to try and fight against it somehow with the tools that you got, and it was a battle. We were super ecstatic that we had 3 wins going into this episode. But I'll say there's definitely some nervousness in the team when you're doing well, and maybe you feel like you've gotten lucky in a couple matches. It's all in the back of your head, that kind of stuff.
I think it kind of like I do get what you mean. I think saying you were kind of lucky, kind of maybe selling yourself short a little bit. I think Skorpios this season so far has been. I mean, every match I've kind of watched. Obviously, Zach has done a fantastic job driving. I think that's very fair to say. He's turned up and really done a good job, and taken everyone to the sword really. But I'd say I've so far I haven't seen much in the way of weakness. Maybe a little bit of a lack of knockout power, if you like. I don't know, but that was the only thing I really think of. But go on.
Yeah, I think the hammer saw setup doesn't really show as well on TV as good as it actually is. Like in our first fight against Copperhead, that last shot where we hit them into the arena floor and they flipped up over forwards. That shot also bent their 1/4 inch thick AR-400 top plate so bad that they had to go rebend it under the press, and there was an imprint of their electronics on this plastic piece that they had underneath it.
Oh no way!
Wow.
So it's
go on.
It's not. It doesn't hit as hard as say Bite Force or something like that, but it's still hitting pretty hard. I would venture a guess that it's hitting harder than any straight hammer bot has ever hit. We get several seconds of spin-up time in every one of those shots, and that's just more energy stored. And then the hammer, the arm itself, is a good 30 pounds, and it moves forward quick.
It's very fluid when whenever you see it, it's definitely coming down with some force as well as the spinning disc. So it's certainly an effective weapon. It seems, as I say, it may lack the knockout power, but it's certainly doing damage all the time.
Yeah, I think it definitely isn't going to be a one-shot kill unless we're hitting something vital, like an exposed drivetrain, or we just happen to glance off some electronics. But our big push for it was just the reffing in the last couple seasons, where we were never able to get 30 seconds of saw time.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why we built Skorpios as a saw robot, was to deliver 30 seconds of saw time to one of our opponents and just sink that blade all the way in. Mm-hmm. And when the refs are not giving you that for whatever reason that they want to come up with, you do something different.
Yeah.
So
I think it works out quite well. Ultimately, it is doing something different, and I think it's fair to say at this point your new kinetic weapon has been better than Saw Blazes, which is obviously the kind of obvious comparison. But I think we kind of saw there was a post, but it came in too heavy initially. But it was We'll talk more about Skorpios a bit later on with Uppercuts. But the last thing I do want to ask, my teammate Joe Brown has literally just messaged me and said, "Do you know anything about Rex coming back?" That's what he's asked.
Rex coming back?
Yeah.
Dan has expressed a desire.
Yes. I love that thing so much.
And there's been talks about potentially potentially some kind of weight bonus in the past, but we never know about these things until they release a new version of the rules. Sure.
Fair enough. But there's your answer, Joe, if you're listening.
He is interested. One thing that we definitely had trouble with Rex was we could never get it to walk to move like the little version Gyrobot.
Yeah.
So Gyrobot could spin more than a complete circle around balanced on one of its feet. And although it processed kind of slow when it did that, it was like almost unmovable, like in the arena. Like we have video of a wedge like driving underneath it as it's up on one leg, Gyrobot, and like the robot just moves a couple inches over and falls behind its opponent. Like it's really quite bizarre. So it's a very difficult bot to fight, and it's always kind of been like a one-hit KO kind of bot. But without an extra weight bonus like Gyrobot had, Gyrobot was 2 pounds in a 1 pound class.
It's sort of not worth it, sort of thing.
Yeah, it was really hard to make the same like design choices. So like the early versions of the CAD that I did for Rex, I designed it exactly like Gyrobot. So it has a big fork in front with the weapon in the middle of that, and then all the electronics are on the leg, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
And that assembly and everything just weighed so much, and then the weapon motor was going to have to be exposed out there on this turning arm, or we're going to have to make some kind of giant hub motor thing. I had no idea how that was going to happen. So that's kind of how it evolved into having the leg move outside the robot and have all the electronics up the blade. And that choice, it turns out, makes a big difference on the whole dynamics of the system. So you can change the angles and foot placement, and we tried all kinds of stuff to make the robot walk better, but we could just never get those big swoopy turns, which is really what that robot needs.
Yeah, like at this point you're kind of sacrificing a bit of control, sort of thing. It's not as precise as, say, you know, the way you describe it. It doesn't sound quite as like nimble as the smaller counterpart.
Yeah, and the smaller counterpart, you know, isn't super nimble compared to a regular wheeled robot.
Yeah, exactly. So you're sacrificing a lot.
Yeah, but it also spun, you know, just under a pound of mass in a 1 pound weight class. So
yeah, it's pretty significant.
It one-shotted many robots. Like, you know, it'd derp around the arena a lot like the big one did and bounce all around all over the place, and then connect once and then launch them out or them in one shot. Like, so that was kind of, it was a very Babe Ruth-esque robot. It either struck out or it made a home run, and it actually, you know, won a tournament. So it's possible to luck your way through it.
Yeah, there's certainly, it's certainly got potential. Obviously, whether it's like unleashed or not depends on obviously the luck on the day. Right, episode 13, shall we?
Yes.
Oh, sure.
Let's get started then with an all yellow affair between BreakerBox and Hypershock, but not the one for BattleBots Bingo, sadly.
No.
Not this time. But interesting that like Hypershock, they struggled with their stream echo. It's interesting that they went with the double spinner rather than the single one that's kind of served them so well. I can only assume that was because they realised there wasn't much offensive work that BreakerBox could do. Hypershock, for me, drove really well. I have to say, massive credit to Jim for freeing Hypershock. I think it was 3 times in the end.
Yeah.
You know, great sportsmanship.
Great sport.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. It's about being nice to each other, apparently.
But it was great because it was a good fight.
It was crazy. It was a good fight. Yeah, it was crazy. It was silly. It was brilliant. I liked it. There was good driving. There was good damage, destruction that we all love. Will Bales, man, like, he is daft on there. It's just silly how good he could drive the thing. Literally, it was upside down with its weapon not working, and he was still able to outmaneuver okay, I will admit Breaker Box was a bit shagged at this point, but still, the point still stands that the man is an incredible driver. And fair play to Breaker Box, because it went the distance this fight, didn't it?
It did.
No, it didn't.
No, it was basically the distance. It was basically the distance.
Almost the distance, 3 seconds to go or something like that. But yeah, I'm a bit upset that Breaker Box hasn't performed as well as we hoped it would, to be honest. Partly because I predicted it to do very well. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think Jim was saying in this episode about having old components that were maybe a bit tired, and it just needed a bit of an update. But I think this was perhaps Breaker Box's most confident fight so far. I would say so, particularly the lift it got in on Hypershock right at the start and threw it into the screws. You could see the potential that it has to do well in BattleBots. Even outside of its live performances. It's been a tough season for them, and I really hope that if Jim isn't going to bring back a new nightmare, as he was suggesting he might, that I think with a bit of work, Breaker Box could be a real contender again next year.
It was one of those. It was one of those fights. I mean, I guess you could say this fight competes with its fight against Falcon as being one of its better fights of the season. It's just I just feel bad for Breaker Box, because it's like it's got that potential, and it's gone up against robots, and it's come out the other end almost fully functional. But Hypershock's just a different breed, I guess, for this time around.
I'll say I'm very impressed that he's managed to keep it working, and it's gone 3-1. Hypershock this season, which is great.
And it only lost to Bite Force.
Yeah.
It's really leveled up.
It did a lot better against it than it did last season. So.
Yeah, and it lasted 3 minutes against Bite Force. It was only a judge's decision that stopped it from total domination.
I'm so excited to see how it does in the bracket.
Yeah.
If it makes it. Well, if it doesn't make it, I will be pissed.
Yeah, I think it pretty much deserves it. One loss to Bite Force, dominant wins over Monsoon, Breaker Box, and Valkyrie. I would say they're pretty much confirmed. I'd hope so anyway.
You'd like to think so. Ryan, anything to add?
Yeah, I'll say that I was very impressed that Hypershock's been running as well as it has been. They're running a new brushless drive setup that they hadn't run previously. In kind of the off season at one of the Florida events, they tried kind of a cluster brushless drive setup and had very bad luck with it. And so,
they were working on it for like the whole event. I was down the table from them, and Will and his team were just sweating over that robot, trying to get it in the arena.
Yeah, and that's kind of par for the course for Will. Like he definitely puts in the work ahead of time, but he's definitely kind of known for kind of getting it all together at the last minute. I think this version of Hypershock was probably a little bit better than previous ones when it comes to that. But I really have no idea how much actual experience he had with that drive setup until it was at the event driving.
Well, I mean, either way, he's driven the wheels off it. I mean, just the way it was manoeuvring as well. It's just absurd. It was so
upside
fast.
down.
I know. Yes, it's so fast as well. Like, my goodness.
And bouncy.
Yes.
It's one of my favorite spots just on looks alone.
Oh yeah,
it looks like a Hot Wheels toy.
It's great, isn't it? It's just like a little RC car with a death blade on the front. It's great.
An RC monster truck. Man.
Yeah, so we say that Onslaught in Robot Wars was the most fun RC car over there. That I think we have a
Psycho Sprout. Come on, mate.
Yeah. So Breaker Box, I think they finished at 1 and 3 this year.
Yeah.
I think, considering the age of the machine, I think that's not bad going.
No.
Realistically, I mean, let's say who did they lose to? They lost to Uppercut, which is a thing. Hypershock, and who was the other one they lost to? Oh, it was Bloodsport last week, wasn't it?
Bloodsport, yeah, yep.
So there's not bad losses, really. You look at the 3 teams they've lost to, and you kind of think, well, yeah, they're all fairly decent. It's kind of a shame that it could have been much better, I think, for Breaker Box. I think the as we all said, the potential's there. It just didn't happen this time.
just the thoughts of what could have been. That's all,
Yeah.
And I know he'll come back with something stronger because that's what you do.
That's what Jim does as well. He's an experienced guy. He's not, he's not a fool. We shall progress though to, well, what I thought was really funny because I thought Yeti just absolutely dwarfed Tantrum in this fight. Tantrum is so small.
It looks like a middleweight.
It really does. Aaron Hill has built something. I reckon he's lying. That's my dog. I reckon he's lying. That's not That's not 250 pounds. That's nothing. It's tiny. Where does he keep all the weight?
It's Sweeney Todd painted orange.
It is. He's lying. He's lying. I have to say, Tantrum did fairly well, all things considered. Like I think it could have gone a lot worse.
Not a bit biff. It could be. But Tantrum's known to be durable.
Yeah.
It's as far as the externals are concerned, anyway, and non-existing fists. But
which just fell off in the beginning, which was hilarious.
Yeah, they just fell off this time. There was no spectacle there at all, was there? Really, but it just got chewed, really, didn't it? But it did manage to withstand a lot of punishment. And then Yeti got a few really good smacks in, and I think that might have been what did it, really.
Yeah, Yeti's drum really has kind of this season. Like they kind of. I think they said it themselves. They don't have the biggest connections. They don't have the biggest engagement. That's the word I'm after.
It's weird. It'll grind and cause sparks, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, get one decent smack in, and that'll do it. But it just
and then you'll get that rainbow hit. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it's worked for them. It's definitely worked for them. Can't fault that. I mean, it's only losses against Bite Force this season, if I'm right in thinking.
Yeah, as well. Yeah. So
Judge's decision, very similar to Hypershock.
There are some people who think Bite Force should have lost, but we'll gloss over that.
Yeah, I think Greg has really got Yeti in a place. We're looking at it maybe at the start of the season, thinking, oh, it doesn't quite look as good as previous versions. But I think he's got it to a point where it suits his driving style. It grinds a little bit. It allows him to keep going forward and on, but also, as we said, get that one or two big hits to really deal the damage. And I think losing the forks in the last couple of fights that he's had has
certainly helped.
He doesn't need them.
No, he doesn't need them. I think it works
better
without them.
They're more of a hindrance, really.
Yeah.
Those little prongly. I mean, the way I look at it is those that were literally just there to take damage and lose them damage points.
Yeah, I know. If you've been watching King of Bots out there, anyone who has been, Tantrum, it's not Tantrum itself, but it's a very similar machine called Boxing Champion, I believe. It's actually been performing quite well. I think Tantrum was built before that. It's you kind of see the evolution between the two machines. Tantrum finished at 2-2. I think they can be kind of. I mean, they lost to, I think yourself, wasn't it, Orion and Yeti? I believe were the only two losses.
Mm-hmm.
So, not a bad season, really. All things considered, like you think Tantrum has kind of had a bit of a poor season. Finished 2-2. You can't really knock that, really.
Yeah,
it's come a long way since having a bent spatula, hasn't it? Let's put it that way.
It has,
especially for its new weapon design. Having done as well as it has, and we saw that really sort of early test video that they put out ages and ages ago, and you can see that the weapon does have the power if it can get the bite, and with a little bit more refinement, I think as the King of Bots version is showing, it could be more of a contender going forward, hopefully.
I think so.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think so. Anything more to add, anyone?
Mm-hmm. Yeti at 3-1, I think they're pretty much a lock for the tournament. So
yeah, I'd say
I think that's pretty much wrapping it up there.
They've got the same sort of thing going for them as the Hypershock, haven't they? 3 very dominant wins and then lose to the reigning champion. That's nothing to be sneezed at. So
nope.
Ryan?
Not at all.
Oh yeah, one thing I'd like to point out is this is Aaron Hill's second combat robot. If you count the first version of Tantrum as his first. So he's done a lot of robot stuff outside of combat, but this is his, kind of second real go at a combat robot.
Sure.
That's quite impressive then, considering that then. So like, it's not really. He's not really gone through the lower weight classes to say most people do. It's kind of he's gone straight in at the deep end, so to speak, and it's you can see the improvement like already from season to season.
Mm-hmm.
So you can only imagine what's going to happen. Say they come back next season and this thing's going to be chucking things all over the place. Hopefully.
It's good to see that Farouk pulled out another tantrum as well, which is always
well, yeah,
it's always good to see. Love that man so much. We'll move on to I don't want to call this a nothing fight. But I mean, I kind of felt that these two, I kind of think they're both out of contention. I mean, Copperhead maybe, but Warhawk, as we know, they went through the Desperado, didn't quite work out for them as they would have liked. I actually think it was quite a good fight, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I think Copperhead did a great job. They did what they needed to do. Warhawk, and I mean, they changed controller, which clearly worked.
Yeah.
Or it helped certainly. The issues that we're facing, it just looks so much more smooth around the arena. But Copperhead turned up and did the business and chewed him up, and that was that.
I just feel bad for Warhawk the way they landed outside of the screws. I mean, that's just the most unlucky land. But that one hit from Copperhead that sent him into the screws. I mean, Jesus, backwards. Yeah. That was insane.
Yep.
I mean, even Kenny went a bit crazy for that one, and he doesn't go crazy anymore. No, he doesn't really. But it was just. I mean, Copperhead, we've all agreed that hasn't been at its best this season. It's had some good moments, but it has been quite unlucky. It was nice to see it actually working to its full potential.
Yeah, I think if we'd have said this Copperhead at the start of the season, who knows, maybe we would see them in the bracket. I think it's just going to be a day late and a dollar short this time, but there's certainly potential, and I think within a season, this machine could be in the upper echelons of the Pantheon, I suppose, wouldn't it? But yeah.
It's an interesting situation. Also, shoutouts to Hal Rucker. He loves his mini bots, obviously.
It was great to see.
You'll know
yes.
that the worst stop decimation was a nice thing, a nice little tied up spot there. Like, just put a bow on that, It's
I think
Hal
nice. Somewhere has just started punching the air, just watching Copperhead, chasing down.
That's his present.
Get it! Come on, get it!
Oliver.
Hello.
What did you reckon?
I mean, Copperhead is. I wasn't sure how to call this one, but Copperhead's not been having a great season compared to Poison Arrow's run in 2016. So it was nice to see it, get some good solid hits in and get a good win before the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a pretty good showing. I do feel bad for Warhawk. I know they had the run last year and just making the tournament last year with that play in against what was it, Endgame and Brutus, and it was just they came up a little short this time, and I think they'll go back to the drawing board and maybe just look into some of the things that maybe just didn't go perfectly this time.
It's clearly not a bad machine, is it? Like
no, not at all.
There's potential there, and I think they did have who did they fight? They fought Petunia and they fought Hydra, and Hydra's obviously had a phenomenal season, so you can't really complain too much.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna come to Orion again quickly. Obviously, you fought Copperhead earlier in the season. How were you nervous going into that fight against them, or was how highly do you rate that as a machine?
Well, Zach Casey, built pretty durable bot. I will say they were in the test box a lot before our fight, trying to get the weapon to spin up correctly. And it seems like they're having some brushless spin up issues and not getting consistent spin up. And the robot really didn't look like 100% when it came to that. So that definitely has you thinking like a different strategy potentially, especially with a control bot like ours. Like if we can get them spun down once, potentially we could just keep them from spinning up ever again. If they're having spin up problems.
Mm-hmm.
We still ended up having to take some big hits and do some repairs, and that robot does hit hard.
Yeah, I think within a season, you kind of dial out those kind of new bot issues, as we've mentioned all season. That these things do take time to take a while to bed in and battle harden them, so to speak, if you like. And this machine, it's gone 2-2. I think they can be happy with that. I think they're just going to miss out on the bracket this time, but you never know. We might see them. We might see them next week. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. I suppose we must come to our good friend Mr. Brewster. So I did speak to him about this before, because I did have a bit of prior knowledge to this season who they were actually fighting, and I knew they fought Bite Force. And I was like, what was your reaction when you found out you fought Bite Force? And they said they thought it was a joke. I mean, yeah, poor Monsoon, man. They've been put through the ringer this year, haven't they?
Well,
We did say.
I can see why, because obviously they finished top 8 last time around, so they are considered a top tier machine this time around. Yeah. But god damn it, bro.
It wasn't really much of a fight, really, was it? Sadly.
It wasn't.
No.
That's not me being horrible. Just it wasn't much of a fight.
I mean, talking of new bot issues, Tom's, as far as I know, has changed, so a lot of the internals of Monsoon from last time round. Yeah. And I think, maybe too much too quickly. We'll see. Hopefully he can work on that for next season. Because it's been quite disheartening seeing Monsoon lose as often as it has in the way that it has so far this season. And I lost to Bite Force, no disrespect, but it wasn't. It didn't put up much of a fight.
No.
Considering their only win this year is against
Ragnarok.
Tim.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of crazy to me.
I mean, I think we could maybe forgive them and maybe look towards a top 16 spot if they had beaten Valkyrie. But because I lost to Hypershock again, Hypershock doing so well, no shame in that. But it just hasn't.
Things just haven't gone their way, has it? Really, obviously they have had a tough draw. The fight against Valkyrie, yes, I think they got hit right on the weapon motor right at the start, and that was
unlucky.
And to get Bite Force as well, it's just never going to be an easy challenge. But Bite Force at 4-0 again, this
streak is ridiculous.
How many battles has it gone now?
If you include the Rumble from the end of season 2,
which I
it
don't.
Would be.
Sorry, I do. Sorry, I thought you were going to say the Mars.
It would be 13, I believe.
Yeah.
I mean, that's silly.
Because they won 8. They won 8 last year, and then they won 4 so far. And then if you include the Rumble, then 13.
And that's just.
Still, Chomp is laughing out there because they beat Bite Force.
Sam, don't.
Look,
for the 1000th time, man.
we have to give Bite Force enormous credit. Monsoon's not an easy opponent to fight. Let's be real here. It finished top 8 last year for a reason. It's a damn good machine, and Bite Force.
It's got bigger reach as well with its weapon.
Exactly. But Bite Force, it's every fight. It's systematic. Every time they just managed to somehow extract a little bit more.
Yeah, and I thought Monsoon had a chance here. With that bigger motor that they put in they needed to get just the perfect hit on the side, and I thought they could do it, but man, he just can't stop Paul, man.
Yeah, well, just the trouble with Bite Force is that it's so low, and those wedgelets are so well designed, and the weapon is so reliable that it's just perfect in all the right places. And I think with the tilting chassis on Monsoon, it was going to be fairly easy for Bite Force to get a hit in, I think.
Yeah. I'm asking Ryan, how do you beat Bite Force?
do you bribe him?
The big thing I think is you got to play the wedge game on the level that he's playing it, and his current setup is has proven to get underneath pretty much everyone. So if I were designing a special front end to fight Bite Force, it would have vertical kind of triangular pieces and quite a few of them with down stops so that they don't drop too low and get stuck in one screws. But I would be trying to slide in between all those little wedgelets, or at least if some of mine go over the top of his, if you're not playing the wedge game against him, you're just not gonna be winning.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, unless you're huge, I suppose. But
Right. That would be interesting.
That's the thing about it as well. I mean, Bite Force, when you look at it, it doesn't look like it should be as good as it is. That's not me being horrible, but it's got exposed sides. It's a really flat-topped robot, so it's got exposed top. The weapon isn't the biggest, as we've already assumed. There's much bigger meteor spinners out there. But it's just little things like those wedgelets at the front and the good driving that just work. And it's incredible.
Yeah,
And
again, Bite Force is just perfect in all the right areas. They've not necessarily gone too far out and too over the top and too overpowered. They're just keeping everything just as it needs to be. Just enough drive power, just enough weapon power, just to keep everything running smoothly and reliably. And it's such a finely tuned machine.
Yeah, and it's not to say that things don't go wrong in that robot, because Paul says at the end of matches that his pit crew, basically they go through the robot and they look for things that went wrong, and then they just fix them, and then there's less things that go wrong in future matches. So does that mean like Bite Force is just going to become this super god, like Thanos power god that you just can't beat ever?
I'm going to say it now. I mean, I honestly think Paul Benmelia has sold his soul to the devil or something. It's just ridiculous.
The new villain of Marvel Phases 4 and 5 is Paul Benmelia and Bite Force.
He's just driving it round.
He's just going to snap, and then at the beginning of a fight, and his opponent's going to fall over,
And
and that's it.
half the BattleBots field disappears after every time. Yeah. I don't know. It's just an unstoppable force of nature, and if anything does beat it this season, will be a very, very. I can only imagine a worthy winner, because it's just unstoppable.
It's definitely a moment of It's probably going to be the biggest moment in the reboot, I'd say.
Oh yeah, like the streak, stop the streak.
Especially since it's the clear 1 seed at this point, obviously.
Oh, definitely.
So, I mean,
there's
no ifs, ands, or buts.
Again, I swear to God.
Tombstone's going to be in the lower, not the lower, but the lower part of the top 8.
Yeah,
the lower high 8.
Yeah, between 5 and 8, basically.
That's what I think.
I think so. I think that's fair.
I mean, realistically, from the current BattleBots field, who do we think could beat Bite Force? Notwithstanding who might or might not get into.
I'd love to see Huge again.
Witch Doctor?
Me too.
Witch Doctor, yep.
Maybe.
Witch Doctor, maybe.
Maybe Son of War actually could take the wedge.
We're all forgetting the obvious beast. Obviously, it's going to be Skorpios. Obviously.
Death Roll would be interesting too.
I think Orion, what you were saying about the wedge game, I think Hydra is playing the wedge game very, very well this season. I think Hydra could be in with a chance.
It's a very decent machine. It's a very, very decent machine. It's got a good opportunity to do that.
The uppercuts upsetting things. I wouldn't be surprised if uppercut beat.
You never know. I actually think one of the next 2 teams could beat Bite Force, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but I do.
That does sound ridiculous.
So, obviously, the next fight was between Free Shipping and Railgun Max. Railgun Max could have had a perfect season. Didn't quite happen. They lost to Free Shipping in the end this time. Free Shipping has really come on strong in these last 2 fights.
Yes, it has.
Yeah.
It was a good fight as well, wasn't it?
It was fantastic.
And I can understand why it was a split decision, and I can understand why Bite Force was picked. Although I will admit, I was actually genuinely surprised, because I thought with the wheel gone, I thought that the judges were going to go for Railgun, basis on damage. But I'm not complaining. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it was a wrong decision. I'm just saying I was genuinely shocked.
You got to consider damage being not the fact that Free Shipping did damage to Railgun Max, but the fact that Railgun Max loses points on damage for their weapon system breaking and also hitting their mini bot.
Yeah,
that doesn't help.
But that's it. The mini bot rule. There we go.
Well, I don't know. Hey, it's still part of your robot. Don't hit your own team.
Yeah.
Gary Jim he wasn't pulling punches in this one.
No.
But I think you can clearly there clearly was an opportunity for them to get into the top 16. I think they wouldn't have paired Free Shipping with Railgun Max, who were at 3-0 if there wasn't, right?
Right.
So, what do you think? I mean, they're gonna be on the bubble, surely.
Yeah, I have them on the outer 8 at this point.
I mean, who they lost to? They lost to Hydra, who had a perfect run, and they lost to who was it? Was it Yeti? So who had a great run as well. Yeah. So
and Yeti's been a brilliant player for the last 2 seasons. Okay, what was it? Top 4 in season 2, and it was in the top 8.
No,
top 16.
Yeah.
It lost the whip back, didn't it?
Yeah. There's like 8 teams I have on the bubble.
I am so like this season. I have no idea. It's just a who's who.
Oh, it's stupid, isn't it? How the hell are we meant to predict stuff? They're not making it easy for us.
I'll give
down Robotiers. Make some crap robots for a game, please.
Just
Whatever happened to wood
just
armor?
have a 30-way rumble to decide the champion.
Oh, please.
And anyone who's actually still running at this point, put them back in. I'm going to give some credit to Railgun. Obviously, they did lose this fight. Eventually, I want to say not their luck had to come to an end, but like, the run that they've been on, it couldn't last forever. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, they gave free shipping as good as a fight as they could give it.
Yeah, I think so. And they gave out some great hits at the start when the weapon was working.
And going split decision against a spinner killer. I mean, one of the biggest, best drivers in the business, considering this is their first time in the US. I want to say, is it their first time in the US? Yeah. I mean, there's no disgrace in that at all.
Yeah, I think it was a good test, I think, for Railgun Max, because they've had a few opponents that really maybe weren't up to the caliber because we didn't know the power of Railgun Max at the beginning of the tournament, where you had Mad Catter and the Splitsy incident, and then you had Shell Shock, and Shell Shock did what Shell Shock did, and then you had Wanhu, which
it basically acted like a green shell in Mario Kart.
Yeah,
basically.
And Wanhu is surprisingly durable, and that fight went the full 3 minutes. So I mean, this was a step up in competition, I think, for Railgun, and free shipping. Free shipping's record doesn't show how good of a robot it is, I think.
No,
where its record, what is it? 2-2, and one of those losses being by judges. So it's had some tough competition. So this was a good test for both machines, and I think
both came through quite well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it doesn't help. It doesn't help Railgun. A loss never helps. But it was a good win for Gary, and I think maybe he can start to make an argument. Maybe he can be like creeping on the bubble. You know what I mean? It depends.
Your prediction may be safe, Sam.
Well, this is it.
I like how all three of us made predictions, and they've all been.
They're all gone poop.
They've all gone horribly wrong.
Yeah.
I will say this much. I think I do want to ask Ryan again. Like, the standard of the Chinese teams this season, obviously compared to, say, the US teams. I know I've asked pretty much everyone who's been on this season. Like, what do they think? Do you see more teams from China coming over and like being at this level now, or like what do you think?
I think the China fighting robot scene has come up quite a bit in the last few years, and I mean, we'll see what the BattleBots selection committee is going to do with that. But I'm going to, guess there's going to be more teams from China that are going to be trying to get onto BattleBots.
Mm-hmm.
And the bots are really strong. I think one thing that'll be interesting to see is if we're going to get some more variety from China, more than kind of small drum spinner, two-wheel drive robots, or if that's going to be kind of what they want to apply with.
Yeah, because when I watched the original season of King of Bots, the first one, I loved Greedy Snake. I love the clamper robots. You know, I like robots that kind of have a little bit of a theme, and they also do a little bit more than just beat the crap out of you. They dominate the round. You know what I mean? So I see what you mean, Orion. So I know I'd love to see 2 Barbecue come over here because I love that robot.
Who doesn't?
But it's another spinner. You know, so you don't want to see more spinners. We already have so many over here. So I think the selection committee will hopefully bring us a nice array.
I'm sure they will do.
Because we want season 5, man.
don't we just? I suppose we best move on to Orion.
Oh dear.
So going into this fight, I mean, obviously you've seen Uppercut. They started very slowly. They've obviously got a lot better throughout the season. I think it's fair to say. Were you concerned by them, or did you think you felt like you kind of got their number?
We were definitely concerned by them. So they've got a lot of reach, and that vertical spinner, it hits way out there. And so if we have our arm forward and they're hitting the side of it, like that could be, kind of a repeat, versus rotator. Like it's built much stronger this year, but it could still get really mangled up. and so that's something that we were always, worried about. We'd also been having, some kind of new version issues, like I was saying, like we couldn't get the thing to stay on the ground when we were accelerating. So it was definitely something to be concerned about. And one of the things that I'm not sure that paid off going into that fight was maybe some of our pre-fight strategy, where we were kind of hoping we would be able to out-turn them, shoot around and get them to gyro a bit, and then kind of get to take some shots in that front diagonal kind of direction next to their weapon. But, sounds like a great plan until you get punched in the face.
I will say that first shot they got on was perfect. I mean, it's very rare that you guys take damage. I think that's not take damage, but take a hit where you can't really recover from it. It takes a lot to kill Skorpios, I think, is a fair comment, and I think that was a big crippling blow.
I'm sorry, Orion, but the only thing that killed Skorpios was the screws in season 2. I'm so sorry.
Oh, Steve, you had to bring that one up, didn't you?
That's a low blow, man.
Steve,
we can talk about that later if you want.
Okay.
But
but yeah,
they literally gave
a
you
lot
the
of
fist.
respect to Alex and the whole Uppercut team. Like that bot hit hard, and we definitely got knocked out, got KO'd by them, and
very good, yeah.
They were using a new bar this fight as well, weren't they?
Yeah, they were.
They weren't using the fist. Did that give them more reach?
I think it's the same reach, but I think there were either there was some damage to the fist, or they were worried about breaking it.
Yeah.
They should have asked Tantrum.
Yeah.
borrow one of their fists. I don't know. I will say, go on. No, go on.
No, you go ahead. You started talking first. You go ahead, boss.
My other thing was in this fight, Uppercut, they've really turned their season around. I think they lost in a rumble with was it Tantrum and Mammoth? I want to say. No. They beat Mammoth separately.
It was Jasper, and
that's it. It was Jasper. Yeah. So they kind of started really slowly, and just since then they've had this huge wave of form. Obviously beating Orion yourself, Yeah. Wow. It's just I thought this was a joke bot.
So did I. I just want to quickly say, fair play to them, because this is the first time Skorpios' wheels I think have been hit, isn't it? Which is incredible. You think of all the robots that could probably be the first one to do it. You don't think Uppercut, do you? Let's be fair now.
Nope.
So, and it was just such a perfect shot. It was a perfect shot.
It was great. Obviously, you guys didn't get your perfect run. 4-0 would have been amazing. Did you ever think in a million years you'd get to 4-0?
We were optimistic going in. We always try and take every fight seriously and go in there. And I was actually, I'll say, before the match, I was actually hoping that we were going to get, and again, this is no offense to Uppercut, I was hoping we were going to get one of the upper echelon bots, one of the top 16 from last season.
Yeah.
That's what I was really hoping our fourth fight was going to be. Because in many ways, to the selection committee, a loss against one of those robots, like if it's a good, spectacular match, is still not really a loss.
Yeah.
Right. And I was definitely wanted the robot to take some top end hits, because I knew there were gremlins lurking in our setup that we were just kind of lucking by on, and we did get those top end shots from Uppercut, just different than what I thought we might get.
That's interesting. I was talking a little bit about that last week, where we had somehow the discussion got on to matchups and how certain matchups can hurt robots. For example, anyone who's fought Bronco this season, it didn't help your record, unfortunately, because they were absolute crap this year, and it's not their fault. It just happened. You can't plan for stuff like that.
No, you can't.
Everyone thinks they're going to be Bronco. You know what I mean? And then, who thought Bombshell was going to go 0-4 again? But everyone who fought Bombshell, your record's hurt. But no one thinks that. It's tough because some robots you want to fight high caliber or high echelon robots and to bolster your record. So even if you lose to them, at least you lost to a good bot. You know what I mean? Or if you beat them, at least you weren't you weren't one of the 4 wins that somebody they weren't an 0-4 bot. You know what I mean? Like they were supposed to be beaten. You know what I mean? Yeah. You want to get wins against robots. It seems like you want to get wins against robots that are like 3-1, where their only loss is to you, so to show that you're beating high caliber machines, and it's tough when you don't get the matchups that you want. But I guess that's all part of the show, and I mean it's a tournament in the end, and a show first, tournament second. I get that, but it's an interesting conundrum with the fight card format. It's super entertaining, but yes, it does hurt some teams in a way.
Yeah. Like we definitely have this saying in our team, like if you're fighting Tombstone, you're not losing.
No way.
And it sounds weird, but like look at the fight with Gruff.
Yeah.
Like they didn't win that fight, but like
what a show.
There's a bunch of people out there who thought they should have.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the judge's call was correct, but even still, they put up a good match against Tombstone. So for them as a team, that's a win, even though it's a loss on their record.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. A good loss is better than an easy win, sort of thing. I think I can't remember, was it Moldy who said that about Bombshell like way earlier in the season? I think it might have been. He kind of felt that his fight against Duck was better than his fight against Bombshell. I don't know. One of those things.
Mostly because of Duck's record, and who they've fought,
exactly,
and who they've won against,
It's all a big game of chess. I don't know.
Yep.
I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to say that I underestimated Uppercut this year. I think Charlie said it earlier in the season. I think after the Mammoth fight that I'd been, I'd written off Uppercut, and no, they've done really well, and I hope they're considered for the bracket. But equally, so is Skorpios. Orion, you've made a really, really great machine. There's a robot over here, or there was, called Vulture that competed in Robot Wars Series 10, had a very similar sort of spinning hammer setup, and they never quite got it going. So I'm really, really good to see that the design's being explored, and you really, really seem to have pulled it off. Like you were saying earlier about the damage that it's been doing, and I'm just excited to see where you take the robot going forward, because it's really, Skorpios has really leveled up this series, and they fully deserve their place on the Remars All Stars lineup.
Oh,
absolutely.
That's very nice to hear. So one of the things that I'll give away the secrets, because I always give away all secrets. I'm a total open book when it comes to this stuff. So one of the things that makes the Skorpios hammer saw different from the other ones of that type, like Vulture and Saw Blades, is you'll notice our blade is a single tooth disc, which isn't like totally unique, but the back side, the non-hitting counterweight side, is perfectly circular. So as the blade comes down, if we hit with the non-tooth side first, it's just a round disc, and it's not going to push the arm away at all before the single tooth comes in. So if we hit with the round part, and the arm's just still holding down on top of our opponent, that tooth is going to come down and hit, and we won't be pushed away from our opponent.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like small designs like that. Just like tiny little considerations, can vary fights either way. It's just crazy, absolutely crazy. But yeah, I completely echo the sentiments of Oliver. I think Skorpios this season has been phenomenal, and I hope we get to see some more of it.
Yeah, me too.
I would have put Oliver's not with words.
The last weird thing about that design that I figured out in this design process is a lot of people just think that the arm is going to just shoot right back up when you hit something. And the way that all the geometry works out is most of the time the arm is going to get pulled forward and not really be pushed up as much. So it spins down, funny internet meme, it spins down just like Plant X. And so when it hits, you can kind of think of it, it's pulling forward or pushing our opponent further into our wedge more than it is getting pushed away.
Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting.
It's like, just, I say, like tiny little design features like that. You know, obviously, for example, we can compare it to say Sawblaze. You know, Sawblaze has got that kind of jagged dragon head disc sort of thing. You know, that's going to make contact somehow. But whereas obviously you guys, you know, it keeps the momentum going round even when it's stuck. That's very clever. I like things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Can you give us any teasers for Skorpios going forwards, Orion?
What was that?
Can you give
teasers?
us any teasers for Skorpios going forward? Any design ideas you might have?
Well, there's an obvious weight issue that we have, and I think this is actually one of the few applications in BattleBots that I think could be fixed with magnets. Because we're very close. We're very close to not wheeling it. So I think some magnetic downforce in the right spot could really make the robot stick to the floor really well and not flip over backwards like it was doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's, yeah, at this point you've got a very solid base. I think it's just like small, like, fettling, so to make it, you know, just even better than what it is. It's just, there's not much. I don't know how to like put it, but there's already a very solid base, and I think there's only small improvements that need to be made for my untrained eye, I suppose. But obviously, I'm sure you've got a lot of ideas going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we might try, developing a wedge specifically for vertical spinners. We definitely found that we were going through kind of what was supposed to be the everything armor for Skorpios kind of quickly. So I think we might try something that is a little bit more tuned to fight vertical spinners, since there are so many.
Yeah, it's definitely the big meta these days.
Yeah.
I suppose we better talk about the main event of the season, probably. Like, it's been kind of building up ever since that kind of promo, you know, washing machine throwing contest way back when. It's Hydra and Bronco, the two big flippers, and it wasn't really a fight. Hydra bullied Bronco.
Yeah.
Calm the fuck down, Hydra. Jesus Christ. You know what? I saved this one for Bite Force, but you know what? I'm going to do it. Hydra is fucking daft.
It is.
There you go.
It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. It's silly. It's just silly. Is there any other way you can describe it?
No,
actually, you know, one thing I kind of not criticize Hydra for, but like, you know, kind of, it's the one thing you kind of think, okay, they can do better. Is probably the driving this season. I think they could be. You know, obviously it's a new machine. They're not really used to how the weapon is. I think this is their first out and out flipper. Like, obviously you got, you know, whatever Warrior was. It's been, but like, you know, Hydra at the start of the season, you know, kind of struggled to get, you know, into killing zone straight away. Like they struggled with the, you know, getting under people and kind of timing the flipper right. This fight they were perfect.
Yeah, they were right on Bronco from the very beginning. I'm interested as to why Bronco used the curved clangers.
And at the front as well. What? Like,
yeah.
They're playing a wedge game.
That was just silly. Maybe they knew they were going to lose and just thought, screw it.
Yeah, let's launch ourselves. You know what my favorite part about this fight was? I don't know how much everybody knows, but a team member on Hydra it's Dick Stuplik, and he had New Cruelty back in the day, and he lost to Toro in the final, so he was super happy at the end of this fight.
I'm not
you see him going high-fiving the crowd.
Yeah,
he was living life, wasn't he? He was, you know, giving a full-on lap of honor and everything. One thing I did like as well about Hydra, I think they posted it online. They didn't really show it in the episode, I don't think. Was they changed the front end. They actually put hinged wedges as well on Hydra, just to make sure they got underneath.
See, I wish this main event was a bit earlier in the season, because I feel like it's not so much a waste as such, but I mean, no disrespect to Bronco here, but let's be honest, even if it won this fight, it wasn't going to make it into the bracket.
No,
I mean,
it wasn't.
I think Hydra's a pretty fair shout to get into the bracket at that point anyway. So it was a bit of a... I would have preferred just seen it a bit earlier on when it was still 50-50 which of these two could go on to go in the bracket. But it was still fun just to see Bronco get launched around.
And they were building this up so much where like it's gonna fight Bronco so early in the season. This was before we really saw Bronco fight, So we didn't know it was gonna go 0-4. So if you're Hydra, you're like, man, I don't want to fight Bronco. They're 0-3. That's not gonna help me at all.
Yeah.
Record wise, I want to fight Bite Force. I want to fight not Black Dragon. They're already in. I want to fight like I don't know, like Duck or something like that, or Death Roll early in the season, or maybe earlier in the season, or Witch Doctor earlier in the season. You know what I mean? So it's like but they built this up so much so they had to do the fight because it's the flipper battle, But I don't think any of the producers thought that Bronco was going to have this kind of season.
I'm glad that they.
Sorry, my dog sneezed.
Last season they were.
Sorry, Oliver, go on.
That's right. I'm glad that they gave us this fight because last season, Endgame called out Tombstone and then we never got the fight.
Yeah.
And then here we are, last sort of regular season episode of the year, and they give us the fight that's been hyped up since the beginning.
Yeah. It just seems like
if there's one thing that you can say about the BattleBots producers, and that's that they do listen to the fans, and if we say, we want something, they are very happy to try and implement it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, did you hear that, BBC? You hear that?
Yeah, they're running reruns. They're trying. They got that contract still. They're making money with it.
I will say one thing as well. Like
this of them.
This fight for me kind of shows, like everything Hydra have done this season, or that team they've operated in such a way they've just done everything right. Bronco for me, they've just done everything, like not wrong, but like they just haven't got it right this year. They haven't got it right, and I think I did feel bad for them, turning up to BattleBots going 0-4 when you're like used to winning. Let's be real here. They finished, top 16 every year. Obviously higher early on, but it just seems to me that there's just I don't know. Like where do you go from here if you're Bronco? Like I'm gonna bring Orion in. Where do you go if you're Bronco? You're in charge of Team Inertia, Inertia Labs. Where do you go from here?
Well, there's really only kind of two ways for them to go, in my opinion, and that is they stay the course and try and make Bronco the best Bronco it can be, which for me means shortening the wheelbase. It means ditching a lot of titanium and replacing it with steel, because the more I do this, the more I think titanium is the wrong metal for BattleBots.
Yeah.
I know that sounds weird, but they broke 2 titanium flipping arms this season, so and they switched to something else later on.
Yeah.
So yeah, like if you break all your titanium stuff, Sonowachi also had problems with their titanium impactor arms. They were constantly over there in the welding booth getting those things welded back up because they were constantly cracking.
Mm-hmm.
I think Gigabot had problems as well last season, didn't they?
Yeah, I think we are seeing the end of titanium as a material in BattleBots.
Crazy.
I think it'll still be usable for like armor panels that are flat, but I personally think in weapon systems and as like shell spinners, I think you can't run it anymore. You can save so much weight and space with lithium polymer batteries, and brushless to a lesser extent. But you can save so much weight that you can run thick steel and have these huge, massive hits. The advantage of titanium has gone away. Like when you had to run big SLAs or NICADs or something like that, then you only had so much weight, so you had to run titanium. But everyone had less power, and they have the same constraints. So I think we're going to see titanium go away and away and away.
You just reminded me of something, Orion, where I was on the I don't know if it was the BattleBots Facebook group or the Combat Robotics Facebook group, but John Maladnik posted something that he's looking into changing the shell for Gigabyte or Megabyte or whatever. He's looking for options for different metal choices. And freaking Will Bales is like, oh yeah, so when's the S7 billet Gigabyte shell coming? I'm like, come on, man. And I just got just was really funny.
One day it'll happen, it will.
Well, I mean, so there are some advantages, obviously, to going with a big billet. You don't have the weakness of doing some kind of roll forming. You don't have the weakness of doing welds. But it's a big waste of material. Like,
Absolutely.
we all know that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a big risk of, if anything goes wrong with that machining, like any one of, probably 12 machining operations, any of those numbers that get missed, like, you've wrecked, like, a whole bunch of material.
For nothing.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's a shame. I mean, Bronco, like, they're kind of stagnated. I mean, if you look at Bronco now and you look at when they re-entered BattleBots in 2015, you can kind of, they're very much one of, say, 2-3 teams that you kind of think, yeah, it's exactly the same, lineage, so to speak.
Mm.
And I think, I don't know if a major change needs to happen. I think, again, I mean, look at last season. They fought good teams last season. Okay, teams suited to their machine, yes, but they fought teams that were good. Sawblaze, Duck, good, solid machines. And I think, they obviously did very well. They went 4-0 last year, whereas this year, it's just everything's kind of come back against them. I think Bronco, as a concept, is still good. I think it's just small things that need to change. I mean, personally, I love the 6-wheel drive Bronco. I want that back. Let's be real here. I want all the wheels. But, it's just, I don't know. It just hasn't gone their way this year, and I think they can... I think, they seemed upset. I think, they're a bit disappointed, but they can't really complain considering the fact that it didn't change that much.
Well, I'm sure internally there's things that are different, and the frame is shorter, and that's the thing. It's tough when you go away from a competition, learning all the things that you've learned. You know what I mean, and trying to make little improvements here and there, and sometimes the things you try to change start to compound, and it just you don't know until you show up, and you don't know who's coming. You know what I mean? Where we didn't know what the field was going to look like this year, and you get little inklings on Facebook of teams saying they're going to apply and stuff like that in the Reddit group, all putting things together, and you try to plan for everything, and you never know how it's going to go. So,
yeah.
I mean, and the other option that they have instead of continuing down kind of the Bronco flipper path is to pivot and make a different robot. So kind of like
it's so hard though, because they've made flippers for what? Decade?
Forever.
Longer?
Since the dawn of...
They've made other things too.
They did.
Well, I know, yeah. We had what, Rhino once upon a time. We had with the little pokey bit out the front.
They had a spinner once, didn't they? I remember that.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was called though.
Oh, yeah,
they
had the
crazy
butcher.
pneumatic spinner.
The butcher was
yeah,
ridiculous.
Wasn't it a pneumatic spinner or something stupid like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is
Crazy.
insane.
I believe it was a starter turbine out of some kind of aircraft.
It's so silly. Bring that back. Let's bring the butcher back in 2019.
Can I talk about Hydra for a minute?
I was gonna say, please do.
Yeah. So Hydra's interesting. Where they're 4-0. That's incredibly impressive. But who have they fought? They fought Free Shipping, which I think is their best win. And then they fought Petunia, and Petunia didn't do so well this year. They fought Warhawk, and Warhawk had to go through Desperado, and maybe their season wasn't so great. And then they fought Bronco, who ended up with a donut in the win column. So I'm interested to see how Hydra would stand up to like a spinner of any kind, because we saw a little bit of that in the Warhawk fight, where we saw a little bit of cosmetic damage on one of the skirts, but that was about it. And then it went ham and split Warhawk into 3. So I'm very interested to see Hydra really get tested, because I don't think they've been tested much this year.
No, I would agree.
So it's interesting. I don't know where I rank them. Like, do you rank them in the top 4 because they have a 4-0 record?
I would purely because of the way that they performed in those fights. I mean, they as you say, they haven't been challenged because they've been very good, I think, as well.
That's true. Yeah.
But you are right. I mean, you look at their opponents and you kind of think they're not easy wins, but like there's no headline apart from maybe Bronco. But Bronco, as you said, has had a poor season.
Yeah. Of course, how did we know that was going to happen? You know.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's fair to say that with Hydra's record, I think they've done an incredible job, and I think they deserve a lot of, take nothing away from Hydra in this fight. They beat Bronco hands down. They were the better machine, and they turned up and they turned them over.
And they got them stuck in a spot that, like, how did you get any? How did they get them stuck there?
I have no. They almost not toasted, but they got snagged, didn't they? But
Yeah.
But for me, Hydra, it's a hands down in the top 16 for me. Like there's not probably
No
top 8 as
question.
well. Top 8 as well for me. But yeah, I do agree. It's questionable. Would you put them top 4? I'd say yes, purely because of their record. But you are right. Their opponents leave a bit to be desired.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what happens and who they get in the bracket, and and like you say, Steve, to see them tested.
Yes, definitely.
Because they could surprise and put on a dominant showing. Equally, it's a bit of an unknown. Perhaps they'll be very vulnerable, and we'll get a bit of a surprise knockout.
Yeah,
we'll see.
One of the most amazing things about Hydra to me is, other than like say electronics and batteries, there is nothing in Hydra that didn't exist in the Comedy Central BattleBots era.
That's crazy.
So, I mean, they are leveraging LiPo batteries, and they do have newer speed controllers and radio gear. But other than that, all the hydraulic stuff that they have in there that makes that flipper go, it all runs off of a brushed motor, brushed amp flow, just like everybody else is running on drive. There is nothing special in that setup other than just some R&D and figuring it out and thinking about it differently than anyone thought about it before.
So that's crazy to think that it's possible we could have seen a hydraulic flipper in the Classic Series. It's just no one really went that route, and maybe it was a weight issue with batteries. So,
I mean, so here's the thing: like, it has a pneumatic accumulator system in it. So it's got 2 pneumatic accumulators that are piston type. So the pump pushes those pistons back, and it compresses a bunch of air behind those pistons, and then they just open a big valve, and that's what activates the flipper. And all that stuff has existed, for a long time now. I mean, there are garbage trucks driving around with pneumatic accumulators. Not those pneumatic accumulators, but different pneumatic accumulators.
Right, yeah, definitely.
So it's just impressive to see the application of the technology, and to get it all fitting inside of a robot is pretty amazing.
It's interesting as well, because obviously you bring that up, they've obviously put a lot of time and effort into figuring this out. It scares me to think this is their first attempt at a hydraulic powered flipper. There is a long Bronco is kind of like the evolution of years and years and years and years of development of pneumatic flippers. This has a long way to go. Hydra could end up being ridiculous in, say, 10, 15 years' time, or whatever it is, however long it takes. They could really, if they can nail this down, this could be certainly something to be feared within in a few years' time.
Yeah, the hang time that Bronco gets in this fight is ridiculous.
Absolutely.
The replays at the end of the fight where they're just showing Hydra flipping, and you see the flipper going up, and then it's just nothing, and then all of a sudden you see Bronco just kind of fall out of the sky, into frame. So it's definitely, I can't wait to see what happens with Hydra this season and how they evolve it. It's just so exciting.
I will say there are a lot of builders who are scratching their heads thinking about building hydraulic flipper-based bots.
Crazy.
So, one thing I will say is, personally, I think it as a 2-wheel drive bot, like that same hydraulic flipper setup in a 2-wheel drive bot with a very wide stance, could do something that Hydra didn't, which is move around the arena with a little bit more turning authority. It drove fine, and obviously they've gotten 4 wins.
Yes.
But, obviously I come from a few different robots that have wide 2-wheel drive stances, so I look at that weapon system and I think you could apply that and maneuver that so well with like a real wide stance 2-wheel drive platform.
Or just a shorter wheelbase, honestly. Something that's got a little bit more of a turning aptitude, Yeah.
And you can see where the flipper ends. There's no reason why that robot couldn't be repackaged into a slightly different shape. Like that, they don't need the giant arm like Bronco has.
Something makes me think Jake is already thinking.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise you if they've already got something onto it. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
This is something that
I
I've
think
been.
we'll probably see some brushless stuff from them too, considering their Facebook posts and Falcon and.
Yeah, the limit is very high for Hydra, and I think it's exciting to see. That's for sure. Oliver.
Just on the whole lines of new technology and that kind of thing. I think this is why it's so exciting having BattleBots back regularly.
Yes.
Is that because it's it's not an open competition like it used to be. There's you've got to apply, you've got to excite the selection committee to get in.
Yep.
You're getting more out there designs, more innovation than you would have before. I've said this a couple of times before, but I saw this BattleBots panel from DragonCon, I think it was a couple of years ago, with I think it was Charles Guan, Lisa Winters, and somebody else who I've forgotten. But they were discussing how Robot Combat's got stuck in this rut of wedge and spinner, flipper. And one will be, it's like rock, paper, scissors. But I think now that we've got BattleBots back, and people are trying more innovative designs, who would have thought that saw blades would be effective again, that crushers would be getting wins, and that's filtering down into all the lighter weight classes as well. Sawbots in the beetle weight class, like maximum ogre drive, and. All that sort of thing. And I'm hoping again that with the hydraulic flipper, that's something that we didn't really think that we would see. In fact, we've got not only a hydraulic flipper but a pneumatic crusher. A few years ago, that would have kind of confused everybody and thought, that seems to be the wrong way around. But both of them are doing really well, and it's just an exciting time to be alive and to be seeing robot combat, because it's. Despite the fact that we've lost Robot Wars, it's almost in a better place than it has been in for quite a number of years, just because of the amount of new ideas and new innovation that's going into it.
Yeah, I agree.
Definitely. The whole instead of following the meta, there's some teams that are really challenging it, you know what I mean, and pushing limits, and you know what I mean, like try to, instead of just following what works, let's try something that's just completely mad. And see if that's the way it goes, and then people maybe will follow us because we defined a new meta. You know what I mean? So it's really exciting. We picked a good universe to live in, I gotta say. of all the ones that we could have ended up in, I think this is a good one.
I completely agree. With that said, I think that brings us quite nicely to the end of episode 13. I will ask one final question to Orion. Did you think you'd done enough to get into the top 16?
It's always hard to say. It definitely felt better than last season, where we had a 3-1 record as well, but we had only judges' decisions instead of 2 knockouts, and the robot was in real rough shape at the end. We're kind of out of spare parts.
The hardware store trip is so funny.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, what do you do, right?
Exactly. Oh, yeah, you gotta survive.
So one thing I think that did us in when it came to selections last time is, we didn't have the spare parts, and we were all just freaking done from building stuff at BattleBots. We were all, as a team, we were just out of energy. Yeah. And so we were just gonna make a hammer setup for the robot instead of running the angle grinder, because although that was hilarious, it was not very effective and counted against us damage wise. So we were just gonna go an AR 400 spike pick thing for it, and I think when BattleBots heard that, that's when we were not considered. As soon as we didn't have a spinny thing that could cause a big shower of sparks, they just didn't want anything to do with us.
Yeah. Oh well. But now you have a big spinny thing that causes sparks, so here's the chance.
You do indeed.
And we have a spare one.
Oh, damn. So yeah. That's a good answer. Okay, so is everyone excited for next week? That's the main thing.
Yes. This whole the selection committee has something on their mind.
It's been waiting for weeks. We still don't know what it is, but we're gonna find out.
I'm scared.
It's gonna be great.
Like a kid at Christmas.
I'm sure.
It's gonna be great. I can't wait. Anyway, with that said, I've been Sam Elliott 64.
I've been Anson Robotics Guru.
I've been Steve the American Killjoy.
I'm Orion Beach.
And I'm Oliver, the evil dork from ESC.
And the three of us, at least, will see you next week for the big twist of whatever it may be. And we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
I didn't know M. Night Shyamalan worked on BattleBots.